Very good to have you with us. Kevin McCullough, glad to be with you from New York. One of the things that we tracked all through 2023 was the persecution of people for what they believe across the globe. And my primary partner in that endeavor is Christian Solidarity International. We have been working together for, I think it's about 12 years now. And for many of you who have listened, you know that we have been in the process of liberating human slaves in recent years. And we had a tremendous year in 2023. Our goal was a little over 190. And we ended up liberating, I think, in excess of 210 women and children from that bondage. So very, very thankful for your efforts on all of that. And we'll give you more information on that as we go along. But I want to welcome back Dr. Joel Veldkamp, who is one of the key members of CSI on the ground internationally and consistently working in all of the hot spots around the world. And he spent a lot of time with us in the previous year. Joel, it's good to see you for the first time in 2024. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here, Kevin. Thank you.
Sadly, I was saying this off air, when you and I get together, it's not usually because there's good news. We spoke a lot about a region called Nagorno-Karabakh in 2023, and I don't know that my listeners are fully aware of what transpired there. We rallied American lawmakers and British Parliament members, and yet it seems like our efforts still fell short. What happened?
Yeah, so this is a region that's part of the ancient homeland of the Armenian Christian people. It's been a Christian region for 1,700 years, and this January 6th, which is when Armenians celebrate Christmas. This will be the first Christmas in 1,700 years when there are no church services in Nagorno-Karabakh, there are no bells ringing, there are no prayers being offered, because in September, the dictatorship of Azerbaijan attacked Nagorno-Karabakh after a 9-month siege and drove the entire Christian population out of their homes. So over 100,000 Armenian Christians are now refugees in the neighboring country of Armenia, and it's a land of ghosts now. There's no one who lives there.
These people that were driven out, they are ethnically Armenians. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. But the reason that Nagorno-Karabakh was significant was because, as you said, it was a Christian space. It was a place, and it formerly was a formal portion of Armenia. How did it become a part separate from Armenia?
It's a long story, but basically Joseph Stalin, when he was the commissioner for nationalities of the Soviet Union, before he was the dictator of the whole Soviet Union, he made the decision to take Nagorno-Karabakh away from Armenia and put it inside the Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan, which was a majority Muslim.
So he moved the border of Azerbaijan into sovereign Armenian space and took Nagorno-Karabakh.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And so it's been that way since the middle of the past century, et cetera. Had they been allowed to practice their Christianity up until just this year?
During the communist times, there was not a single church that was open in Nagorno-Karabakh. There was not a single priest there. But when the Soviet Union fell apart, when communist Russia collapsed in the early 90s, the Armenian Christians of Nagorno-Karabakh rose up and were able to seize their freedom. They were able to make themselves into an independent republic, closely allied to the Republic of Armenia. And so for the past 30 years, yes, it was a free land. It was a land where Christianity was flourishing. It was a democracy in a region surrounded by dictatorships. And now it's just been erased from the map in basically 1 week in September.
We discussed the siege many times in 23. The people that were displaced and taken to Armenia, were they taken peacefully? Was it torturous? How did Azerbaijan treat the refugees as they were getting them out of their country?
It was quite painful. I've made this drive myself from Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia. It normally takes 2 hours. It was taking these people 3 to 4 days because there were just so many people trying to leave at the same time, because there was so much terror and so much fear from the Azerbaijani bombing and children getting shot on bicycles and people disappearing. So people were riding in dump trucks. They're riding 10 people to a car. Officially, it's reported that 64 people died just trying to make that drive, whether from health crises or dehydration or young babies and old and elderly people succumbing to the elements. So it was extremely traumatic, this exodus.
I know that under the previous administration, there had been some hope that the Trump people, with his ambassadors and so forth that were there, that the persecution of people based on faith was going to be something that was going to be lessened in the future. It appears that the current administration reversed course on most of those initiatives and policies. What was CSI's feeling about how the British government and the U.S. government interacted on this issue?
On this issue in particular, it's quite clear that the U.S. and the U.K. orchestrated the ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh. I'm sorry to say, it's very clear that they want Azerbaijan as an ally against Russia, and the rights and freedoms and the history of this ancient Christian people just took a backseat to that. President Biden was photographed shaking hands with the Azerbaijani foreign minister in New York as the bombing campaign was underway in September. So it was quite brazen, I would say. And I don't know how much President Trump actually knew about this issue, but I have to say his administration was not a lot better on this particular crisis, even though
I know that this particular issue, it had not really bubbled to the degree that it was until more recently. But in opening discussions about persecution, generally speaking, we had not had an administration kind of take that step. Let me ask you, the displaced refugees, how have they been received in Armenia? I mean, they're ethnically identified with those people, but obviously they've lived separate from them for a while. What's been the acclimation of those people into Armenian territories?
Yeah, in many ways, they are a separate people. They have their own dialect of the Armenian language. They have their own history, their own customs. But it has been inspiring, actually, to see Armenian civil society and Armenian volunteers kind of rise to the challenge of welcoming these people.
Does Armenia see itself as a Christian country?
It does, yeah. Okay. Christianity is integral to Armenian identity. But Armenia is not a rich country, and their population just increased by 4% overnight, and that's entirely refugees who don't own anything, much less houses or cars or other necessities. So it's not been easy to welcome these people, but I would say
this
on the
may
whole,
be self-evident or self-fulfilling, but is CSI on the ground in Armenia? Are you working with the Nagorno-Karabakh refugees? Is there a way that my people can help?
We're working with a few different Armenian groups to help these refugees. And one of these groups is led by a man named Vardan, who's really a hero. He's a rehabilitation specialist, and he's been working for decades to help people with war wounds or people with physical and mental disabilities acclimate to life. And he was doing that work in Nagorno-Karabakh, but now he's exiled with the rest of his team and the rest of his patients, and he's continued, even though his patients are scattered all across the country of Armenia.
Ready or not, we'll be right back.